Hello, my name's Rod.
My name's Richard Ford.
My name's Linton Jones.
I'm Elizabeth Hobson.
I go to Speaker's Corner. The reason I go is to get a lot of this out of my system.
A lot of that, it goes both ways. They won't be talking about what happens with men. This is just another feminist point. And feminists have a direct line to all media. And they need to keep reinventing new, drastic, tragic issues.
I've been going to Speaker's Corner for 4 years now. My original motivation is I simply needed to say things that I'd not heard anybody else say. One of the things that a misogynist or any form of authoritarian culture tends to do, it can almost make you feel you're mad, because you would hear from the media and from other people things which are clearly not going on, and which causes a sense of disorientation. And the only cure for that is actually to speak the truth and to see if you can connect to another human being who sees the same things as you.
It's between male sentencing and female sentencing, which is about 40% in this country, 35-40%. And women also go to more comfortable jails and are more likely to be let off early than men. Because the assumption is, and it's a very sexist assumption, is that essentially a woman must have been led astray by a man if she commits a crime, or be a victim of something or other. They can't believe that women actually are masters of their own destiny in the same way that men are, which is a terrible thing to say about women, I believe.
My initial reason for going to Speaker's Corner was to talk about the problems associated with the family courts, the divorce process, and how it's not just a case of how unfair it is, but how it is compounded and exacerbated by the system, such that you end up with lacking lots of money and gaining not much in return. I was influenced by another chap who was with Fathers for Justice, which I was at the time, and he, while we were waiting for the bus in our Father Christmas outfits, he decided to show me how you can just go over and speak at Speaker's Corner. And I thought, my word, that looks good, I'll have a bash at that.
No, that's untrue, because what I said, in my opinion. No, thank you very much. Move on. Everything I say is in my opinion. No, I'm very careful, best careful I can be, because it's important to stick to what I want to stick at. I had a guy, fine, yeah. Just get off, you know. Do you take selfies?
You can't say get off your high
horse. Oh, gosh, yes. So you won the day on that one, sir. Yes, jolly good. And enjoy your, as if I haven't been to university myself. Anyway, a guy, social sciences, and they were talking about feminism at the time. Woof, another big audience. And he was saying that they were allowed to be, he was saying women have been oppressed ever since in history. And I said, absolute nonsense. And you got loads of public laughs, the usual stuff. And he said, but it's known, it was in the 20th century or something, 19th century rather, sorry, that you're allowed to beat the wife with a glass cane, so providing it was no thicker than a man's thumb. The idea being the glass would break, you see, so it limited the bruising. And he believed it. He says, I'm doing social science at such and such, I was down the road here, probably at that communist dump. And he says, and I did a module on it. I mean, I berate people when they laugh like they do, but I did laugh. He'd done a module on it, so he knew it. And I said, no, that's not true. I've researched that, and I've got a paper. And I tell you what, I've got the paper in there. Now, when I produced that paper, would it prove to him, do you think, if I had it at the time, that that's wrong? No, because his wife disagreed. He got so angry, he's coming over and shouting, misogynist, took that off, stood up here, and threatened to thump my friend. That's how hung up he got on it. But I tell you what, when people come along and say, where's your evidence? I say, hang on a bit, there it is.
I've come to central London today to attend Speaker's Corner for the first time. Hi all, it's my first time here, so I hope you'll be a little kind to me. And I've actually prepared a short monologue, so if you could hold any interjections or questions till the end, I'm not planning to stop. I am woman! Hear me roar! But wait, before you hear me, you should understand that there may be consequences. Maybe you'll be defamed. Maybe you'll be drenched in milkshake. Maybe you and your children will be harassed and assaulted. These things may come to pass if you are so deplorable as to hear this woman speak. These punishments visited upon you won't come from the mythical patriarchy that we're told wants to silence feminine perspectives. These punishments, if and when they come, will be meted out by adherents of feminism. Permit me to retrace my steps. I am not woman. I am merely a woman. Only a feminist would be so arrogant as to presume herself the voice of all womankind. I am a woman, but with my roar, I seek to rein in my crazy sisters. Feminist theory is amusingly simple. It rests on 4 erroneous assumptions. 1, that men are responsible for all of society's ills: war, environmental degradation, interpersonal conflict, including that done by the women that they have manipulated. 2, that women are society's primary victims, yet also heroically responsible for all the good in society, including that done by the men they've influenced. 3, men must be penalised, even where ostensibly personally innocent, for the collective guilt of men throughout history. And 4, women must be compensated for their collective victimisation throughout history. I am a woman. More importantly, I am a liberal and an individualist. And when I roar that feminism does not speak for me.
Right.
I am a woman, and I am filled with gratitude, not for feminism that claims responsibility for my freedoms. I am grateful to men. To the men in my life who support and encourage me, to the men who laid down their lives so that we would be free, to the men who spend their lives dedicated to making women's lives safer and more rewarding, like John Stuart Mill and the men who elected him on a platform including votes for women, like Dr. Earl Haas, who invented the tampon, and Aruga Chalam Muruga Nathan, who revolutionised menstrual health for poor rural women in India by inventing cheap sanitary pads. And I'm not just grateful to the men who served women's interests. I'm grateful to Khaled al-Assad, a Syrian archaeologist who helped evacuate the City Museum of Palmyra before it fell to the Islamic State, and then showed such courage and sacrifice by refusing to tell Islamic State the location of hidden artifacts that they wanted to destroy. He was beheaded aged 83 in 2015. Never before have so many of us owed so much to one old man. I'm grateful to Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin for taking their small step 50 years ago, a great risk to themselves, that was such a great leap for mankind. I'm grateful to the 14 astronauts and 4 cosmonauts that gave their lives in less successful missions to broaden our horizons. And I'm grateful to every man who lives and loves and loses and tries to find meaning amongst the absurdity. I am a woman who has no gratitude for feminism. Feminism that kicked down so many open doors. Feminism that uses gynocentrism as a shield and misandry as a sword. Feminism that won't lie down, even now women in our society have all the rights we could possibly want, but rather campaigns on for more and more privileges. Feminism that hurts women by hurting the men and boys that we love. I am a woman who wants for men and women to have equal rights, choices, opportunities and treatment. This is what an anti-feminist looks like.
Because so much in our society is full of false information and dogma, about feminist dogma, and I speak my experiences in life to the people who come to Speaker's Corner.
But a lot of young women will say, oh, I'm never going to have children. But when they're 45 and most of their eggs have gone, they're going to suddenly, they might decide they want a child.
No, that's because they want a slave.
No, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. No, listen, yes, how can you say that's they've been sent up the garden path where the feminists they listen to don't know the first thing about biology.
Women can't make their own decisions.
No, she should be able to make an individual decision with the right information.
It's both therapeutic, both for yourself and for the audience, because once you say something and it's clear that the sky is not falling in because you've spoken the truth, people will shyly take you aside and say, I believe, I agree with everything you say, and tell you their story, even though they were vehemently disagreeing with you in public when people were looking, which is both infuriating and also therapeutic at the same time, strange enough.
Yeah, I mean, people get angry at me because, they sometimes I'm accused of being anti-woman, but actually it's the exact opposite. I believe that women are the moral equals of men, should be just the same way as men. Women are just as in charge of their lives as men. And so for that reason, they're responsible for their bad actions. And any honest, decent woman should have nothing to fear from that. It will never affect her because she won't commit the crime. But she will get the respect of men who see her as a woman with moral agency and who is a true individual.
10 years later, I found myself doing the same thing because I decided to improve my public speaking capacity and capability by attending a group called Toastmasters, which is an international group, helps you to get confidence in speaking. And the third thing that led to it ultimately was one of our group who decided we should go to Speaker's Corner and go and talk about our business there. So we got up from our coffees, marched over there and started. That was about 6 or 7 years ago, and of course we're still here now. I talk about a wide variety of subjects, interacting with the audience as much as possible so that maybe I can gain something from them and they can gain something from me with a bit of rational conversation and interchange, but of course it ends up far more interesting than that.
They never want to come forward. No, I only have to ask, because the higher you get, the more specific you get. I ask them about a question here, and they can't answer it. Like my mother used to think every doctor could do anything. You walk into your GP, and then you whip out your child and fix your leg, give you a brain operation if necessary. Your doctors are wonderful. She attributed all these powers to them. In fact, they can't do any of these things. So, but the doctors start to believe they could. This is a problem. So I behave that way. Drink this, milk this. But so when someone comes and says, "I'm a lawyer," I say, "Come forward again." "Oh, I'm actually a family lawyer." That's even better for me because I know a lot about that. Or they say, "I'm a such and such lawyer," and try to dodge it. But there's one question you can ask more, and this is this: do you, as a lawyer, do you think you have some kind of authority, especially if they're barristers? If they say yes, you say, "Where'd you get it? Who gave you that authority?"
The society tends to give
Well, they don't. What do you mean tends to? I want everyone to come round here now. We've got a little. I'm going to ask you a question. Did you consent to the authority of? No, you didn't. You made that up.
It's an implied.
Exactly, and that's bullying. You see, this guy, he says, "Oh, I got it from the university." I said, "Where'd they get their authority from?" I know there was a case online. It is in Canada. Someone phoned up the sort of the Department of Justice head or something like that. Someone said to him, and he phoned him up and he said, and it got through to him. Not normally. He said, "Yes." He said, "Are you the such and such?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Can you tell me where you get your authority from?" And he went,
But if a doctor gave you a recommendation as opposed to, then who would be more likely to listen?
"If what?"
If you had like a disease, and then the doctor told you, "Oh, this is the disease," and then I told you a different way, and I don't have any disease. Like, who are you more likely?
Well, if it's a doctor of social science, certainly I wouldn't go on to
No, it's not medical.
But if it was someone, it's up to me. Credibility.
Who would you be more likely to choose?
I'd be more likely to choose someone that I believe has a proven, very proven history.
Exactly.
I believe in them. That's all.
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying. So I
might ask.
You're implicitly giving him authority.
Yes.
You're saying,
I'm not saying
and
it's
it's based on, like you're saying, that they've maybe got a proven track record, and you think they're more knowledgeable.
And there's another step. this is really, really, really interesting. Of course, because we're all different, it's good to consent to other people, to be an authority at different times, to teach your children, look after your children, or whatever, to be your boss. Someone's really cool and they can do it well. It's only another role within an organisation. They don't have to be paid more, but we have to. And then what happens is that breaks down in forms again, they turn forms again, yeah? And, but when you do that, you have to protect yourself. For instance, you might want someone to run your country, to administer the country, yeah? And you might want to consent to a certain person. When you consent to someone else doing something, you need something alongside you. It needs a contract.
But that's intimately tied with consent, so it's not.
But it's not. That's your problem. It's not. I'll tell you how it's not.
Well, according to, I'm going according to like Locke's.
Well, what?
Like John Locke. Like Locke is consenting.
Tell me.
Because it's contract theory, so it's that there's an implied consent that I've lived here and I've grown here, so I will obey the laws. Insofar as the laws will then have certain conditions, and as soon as they fall out of that, the implied consent goes.
Yeah, but the trouble is, it's got to be personal consent. You can't have implied consent. You can't. No one's. I resent it if someone implies that I've consented. That's something that I don't want.
But you can never have personal, like direct consent.
No, in that case, I don't consent to it.
I've got no idea if I'm the first woman who's ever attended. I get the impression there's been a woman or two before me, but I gather it's a fairly rare occurrence. I think before I went to Speaker's Corner, I was expecting for there to be some kind of radical religious zealots hawking their ideas, which there were, and as far as how it would feel to deliver my presentation, that's something I didn't really give much thought to, because I think it's generally better that way, because if I give thought to things like that, I'll start getting anxious. So, I was at a feminist meeting and I asked some feminists who were talking about how men rape and pillage the earth and they rob it of all its natural resources, and isn't it awful, and women must do something about this. And I pointed out that maybe what we should be asking women to do is not to harass men over this issue, but is to stop buying so much crap. And I was told that it's because
the Bible says that in Ephesians chapter 5 verse 21, wives submit to her husbands as the Lord, because the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. He is the savior of the body. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives are to submit to they are husbands in everything. On the top, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself.
All the people who want him to shut up, please put their hands up. Yeah, goodbye.
God created us for a purpose. God created us for a purpose. There is a place for a man. There is a place for a woman.
Yes,
there is a place for a man, there is a place for a woman. You've been confused. You've been confused. You have to come to the will of God. God created us for a purpose. You are not, you've been created by God. The God of Isaac. You've been created by God. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob.
Somebody dismissing it.
We've been created for a purpose.
We've got it.
No one's going to be shocked. God created us for a purpose. There is only one God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. There is only one way to come to God. Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. There is no one can come only by Jesus. The wage of sin is death. But the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ. We are sinners by nature. We need to repent from our sin. No, we need to repent. We need to repent from our sin. We need to repent from our sin. We need to repent from our sin. We need to repent from our sin.
This is your fault.
Yes. We're not your enemy. We're not your enemy. We're not your enemy. The wages of sin is death. We are sinners by
Come closer so people
nature.
can't
We
get
need
in.
to repent.
Yes.
We need to repent. We need to repent. We need to repent.
You're a disrespectful
Only God
man.
will forgive us through Jesus.
Then
Only God forgive us through Jesus. That is the truth. Have a nice day.
That
God
men
bless
are
you.
responsible for all of society's ills, for example, interpersonal conflict. Now, there's a bill going through Parliament, the Domestic Abuse Bill. At the moment, it's just had its second reading last week. We can argue over the figures, if you like, of how much domestic abuse is perpetrated by men and how much by women, how many of the victims are men compared to women. Personally, most of the evidence seems to suggest it's pretty even Stevens. Men and women are equal amounts perpetrators and victims.
The main thing we speak about is men's rights, anti-feminism, but all the other things that come into a lot of things that are happening in our society now, that are happening in the wider context politically, and there's been so much things changing in our society over these last 5 years.
You have a belief system because you have a faith, that's right. That tells you how to behave, from what I understand. I'm not a Muslim, so I don't entirely know, but I think you have very strong families, which and so do Jewish people.
We all respect. Christianity also preaches that man should be circumcised. So does Judaism.
No, it doesn't.
I've just
Men
told
should
you
not be.
Jesus
No,
was circumcised.
yes, because he was a Jewish man before he became. He was a Jewish man. He came from the Jewish background.
That was easy if necessary.
Everyone. Do you know why in the Middle East people are circumcised? Because in hot countries you can get irritation with sand under your foreskin.
Every doctor would tell you circumcision.
No, every circumcising doctor or a Jewish doctor would, because it's part of their culture.
So it's a matter of opinion.
It's not a matter of opinion, it's a fact, and it's a fact in law.
And you say laws should be changed.
No, the law would have to be changed to make it legal. It would have to change.
I'm sorry, but the law is perfect as it is.
The law is what?
The law is perfect.
Yeah, well, the law says that you're breaking the law by circumcising an infant. Yes, it does. Yes, you will look it up then. I'm going to put my glasses on, but I'm afraid they might blow.
Where should I look at it? What law?
I shall tell you once I find it on here. I can't see without my glasses.
It seems that you haven't got your tackle right.
He's saying, we're discussing circumcision, and he's saying that circumcision, we should be circumcised. And he's saying that it's not illegal, and it is illegal.
So explain that.
Yeah,
well, he doesn't know the law, so maybe perhaps you can help your friend out.
I know the law very well. It is bodily harm, and therefore carrying it out is a crime under the Offences Against a Person Act 1861. There are no exemptions to the law for religion. There are no exemptions to the law for religion or culture. It would need a parliamentary override to be legal. That has never existed. The legal position on this is absolutely black and white. It is a crime.
So does it say black and white that circumcision is not allowed?
It's bodily harm.
No, it's a grey area then.
No, it's not remotely grey. There's nothing in the law to say that you can't cut the left foot off a baby. Nothing. If you want to, so would you say if there's a religion where they like to cut feet off babies, that'd be okay?
No, that's feet.
But there's no law. But there's no law. There's nothing in black and white that says you can't do that. But it comes within bodily harm, and this is bodily harm.
Grey area.
It's not grey.
It is not grey. You
So
keep
what,
saying that.
would you not be discriminating people who want to practice their faith? The three Abrahamic religions which we established.
There are
Christianity,
no exemptions. There are no exemptions to the law for religion or culture. So there's plenty of things in the Abrahamic religions about killing people for all sorts of reasons. But you don't do that in Britain today. No, it's exactly the same.
On the medical ground,
and if you remove a foreskin, you're deforming. If you remove a foreskin, you're deforming. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. 90% of the nerves, 90% of the nerve cells that do pleasure during sex are in the foreskin.
Argument, cutting off a leg and killing people and completely going off a different.
No, you are. That's right. I got the right pamphlet now. Oh, bloody hell! Oh, I'm getting all rusty. The thing is, you have no knowledge on the whole purpose of the foreskin and what it's for.
Most doctors would certify that it's not something that should be
No, often doctors are Jewish or Muslim, and they'll say that because it's part of their faith and it's an important thing. I can understand why someone from the faith would be upset with us saying that because it's part of your culture. But you have to understand that in this country it's against the law.
Your only argument is you're just saying the law is against it, and we clearly, as this gentleman established, the law is just saying bodily harm, which bodily harm means cutting off a hand, which we all know that. But it doesn't specifically specify. You have no ground on argument. Your argument is
But let's silly thing to say. You're going round and round and round because you can't focus on what we're actually saying.
Establish it from a doctor's
You're like a
point of view.
magnet. You're like a negative magnet. You can't
When
cope.
you're standing here trying to preach us, when you establish it from a medical point of view, whether circumcision is wrong.
Do you know what the foreskin's for? Do you know why boys are born with a foreskin? No, you tell me, because you're the one with all the opinion on this. You tell me what the foreskin's for.
You're the one who's trying to preach to us.
No, I'm asking you. No, because you're the one who's saying this. No, I can tell you. I can quite easily tell you. I can quite easily say, but I'm saying since you have such a strong belief that everyone should be circumcised, you tell me. And I've asked you. I'm going back to basics here. I'm asking you, what is it for?
Okay, for argument's sake, I don't know. You tell us.
You don't know.
Yeah,
Well, you should know. Because if you're going to have such a strong opinion, and now I will tell you why males, including other life forms, mammals, have a foreskin. It's to protect the head of the penis from damage. It's like an eyelid. The same function. It protects that part of the body to keep it sensitive. And not only that, there's a huge amount of sensitivity with nerve endings in the foreskin. And I've met men, young men, and he said he finds it difficult to continue to have sex with his partner because he gets sore. And if he had a foreskin, it wouldn't be like that. The foreskin has a purpose, and it takes a lot of the pressure and a lot of the rubbing off that part of the body, which is very sensitive, and it means you can continue building a relationship with your partner, which is completely natural, where you both build up an exciting and loving relationship together.
My first experience of talking was completely different to what I thought. I came with a prepared script, which I immediately abandoned immediately I started talking. Had no trouble getting an audience, but with a great deal of aggression. It became clear to me very, very quickly that the things people were responding to were not the things I was saying. It was simply that I was disagreeing with the mainstream narrative, and therefore I must be X, Y and Z, which taught me really the depth of the difficulty we're in. It's not so much that people disagree with us, it's that people actually cannot hear what we say, and then they disagree with an invention.
It's an old idea. In Britain, Victorian England, we used to have a system called coverture. It basically meant that if a woman committed a crime while being married, the man would go to prison for not controlling her. Because the logic was, women need to be told, rather like children. Women were legally like children. On the one hand, they couldn't own property directly. On the other hand, they were not responsible for anything they did. Now, our society abolished the law of coverture, but it didn't abolish the mentality of it. And the same thing possibly happens in Denmark. I should imagine there's an awful lot more talking about female victimhood than male victimhood in the media.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've grown up in Singapore my whole life.
You've got such an interesting mixture of accents.
Do I?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not as involved in the Norwegian politics.
Oh, right, okay.
But yeah,
Okay, that's true. So all I'm actually basically saying is that let's instead... The thing is, we've got this peculiar sort of morality that's been foisted upon us. It's called the kyriarchy. It basically means everybody oppresses everybody else. So I have to respect you as a woman, but I don't respect you as a white woman because you're privileged, but I do respect you as a foreigner, but this, that, the other. And it all gets very, very complicated. Everybody's oppressing everybody else. And I've got to work the exact precise amount of respect I'm supposed to give you. For instance, it's very confusing. Do I respect you more because you're a black man, or do I respect you more because you're a white woman? Very, very confusing. Why don't we drop all of this and respect people as individuals and human beings?
Well, on my first experience, when I stood up at the first time, was the fact that I wasn't actually standing up on anything because we didn't have anything to stand on. We were standing on the ground, and I decided to name our group Ground Level. No one else knew that. And speaking from the ground like that, when you're 5'8", last time I measured, is not necessarily easy, but it is possible as long as you've got bags and bags of confidence and personality and a loud voice. I didn't have that time developed that knack, and we continued to try to gather audiences via various techniques to attract attention, quite crude and limited and fleeting. This went on for about a year, I guess, and gradually we realised that people were just coming and stopping and listening to us, and we didn't know why, and it was just pure experience.
There's no need for inflation. Well, you know about inflation, it's inevitable. No, it's not. If you had your own country and you printed your own money and you actually made your own laws and all this kind of stuff, and you take responsibility for yourselves, and I mean you take responsibility, which we don't do, then you wouldn't have all these problems. There wouldn't be this. It's only in the last few hundred years this has occurred. But you think it's normal, so you go to work, get up early in the morning, go to work, come back in the evening, and then at weekends you go and do your shopping, and Sunday you might go out, you might have a chance to go and have friends round. Yeah? So, oh, how well we're living. I got a new iPhone, look at the size of my television screen, and what decent food we're eating, even though you don't know what's in it. All right? And that's it. That's your life. I'm retired, and people say, good Lord, what do you do now you're retired? I say, what do you do? They say, well, I've got a job. I say, what do you do then? Up 6 o'clock in the morning, come back, 6 o'clock at night. You would never get promotion unless you work at least 2 hours a day, free, otherwise you won't be considered. You've got to be a slave. And then you come home again and then do what I just told you. No wonder no one has any time to make babies and things, or even afford to look after them, because we're worse off than my father was.
I enjoyed delivering my prepared presentation. I had a 5-minute presentation that I gave, which had kind of flowed out of me into my notebook like the day before I came or something like that. So I had fun doing that. I'd like to do it again actually, if I didn't have to go home and cook the patriarchy's dinner in our...
In a situation where, there's a man who has so much potential for actually creating science, for actually progressing humankind, but at the same time, if he goes down the route of promoting instant gratification, then the society will fall apart. Whereas the ideology of traditionalism promotes a way of living that enforces obligation amongst the local community. And if you have that, then you have a society. And religion, as an institution, has always promoted a way of living that basically enforces obligation, and that also promotes local communities and their ability to survive over a long period of time.
Isn't that good?
I think that's great.
I hear some theme, man. Some themes. I don't know. You hear, you dare, you. I think he agrees with it. Biology, sociology, science, religion.
My problem is with the atheists and the agnostic movement that we've seen, mainly in the West in the last 50 or so years again, is that this particular movement, I'm not too bothered about the fact that this movement has had or involved or led to a lot of people turning their back on God. But what I am annoyed about is the fact that this movement has turned its back on traditionalism.
Different companies, all of which were competing with one another, then they could probably recover the BBC still. But it's... Well, the Arethian instructions were that you were not to have any opinion, and you were to just read the damn script. And unfortunately, only when they leave. But again, I mean, the people who've left the BBC and are criticising it are biting huge chunks out of it. And you have somebody who's inculcated into the whole BBC, you know, the historical BBC thing, and they've been in for 25 years and they've just been thrown out, and they have the passion of a, you know, the not a woman scorned, but like a convert.
Anyway, so yeah, and then what I'm going to say is that what's interesting is that even though this definition has been expanded to include that, right, now people like us are saying, okay, that's great, that means that more men who are being abused can start claiming domestic abuse, and the feminists are getting very, very upset about that, because there's something called parental alienation, which is she's mentioned, where when a parent, a man and a woman split up, and the woman often gets 90% of women get custody, right? She stops the dad seeing the children, right? And I personally know people who work as family court advocates who work with dads who are desperate to see their children, and they said to me that almost every single case that they deal with, the man was being abused by his wife before the children, before they split up, before she stopped seeing the children, right? And this parental alienation is just an extension of the abuse that was already happening, and it's punishment because the man had the audacity to leave the woman.
His own, had his speaker way up, and he was going, "Yeah, bitch, I'm gonna," and I'm like,
that's very bad behaviour. But what's that got to do with human rights?
Because it's objectifying women. He looks at me as someone rather than as a person.
Well, that's just bad behaviour. It's not.
But it's directed towards women. It was directed towards me and another group of women.
Well,
so I'm not saying.
Are you saying there's a comparison between that and, let's say, genital mutilation?
Well, I don't think that.
Or paternity fraud.
I'm not saying that these issues aren't there, but I don't feel that I think you're misunderstanding what feminists
Trust
are.
me, I've written 3 books about feminism. I do not misunderstand feminism. I understand feminism extremely well.
Well, I don't identify with your
of course not.
definition of a feminist. Okay.
I think I can live with that.
Fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.